Myself and my partner have been traveling around in tiny homes now for 6 years, via land and sea. Of course, with all these highs, we do have some pretty low lows.
Oh my god. Starter motor's not playing ball.
Sorry, you okay?
We have had our tiny home on sea, our beautiful sailboat, all the way to a tiny micro campus at Trimbalingo. We had a Mitsubishi Express in Australia. This was a small to medium van. We obviously couldn't stop there, however, so we came home to the UK with the plans to buy a larger Sprinter-sized van. We ended up finding a dream Luton box after 3 months of looking, and this was the beginning of our adventure around Europe in our Mercedes Sprinter medium wheelbase Luton box van. I will mention I am a carpenter. I have been doing carpentry now and construction in general for 10 years. Actually, about 11 or 12. Oh, I'm a bit older than I thought. As you can see here, I am battening out the walls. I'm creating studs. I'm creating something to fix to. It is also important to find a way of sealing these timbers against the wall. You do not want a gap between those studs and your panel, and that would just be something which is very hard to fix later on. So as you can see here, I am actually putting the ply boards on before the installation. This was only because I didn't have the insulation at the time. You want to be putting the insulation in straight away if you have it. I just didn't have access to it, so I couldn't hold back. I had to get these timbers on. When it comes to doing your cuts, make sure you set your gauge of your cutting blade to only a mil, half a mil deeper than the material cutting. You do not want to be putting your blade at full depth with the risk of then chopping your fingers off if you were to grab the underside. If you're wondering, I was actually leaving the back roller in for the meantime, just simply because I had to use the van for work. The bottom plate, which I'm using to hold all of the studs, I have raised it off the floor and I put sealant underneath that timber to stop any sort of damp coming up through into the studs. The insulation I have used here is 25mm hardboard insulation. The thermal value that this material gives you is crazy high. You do obviously have the foil insulation, but compared to this, it's low thermal value. And the only one that does compete is very, very expensive, which you would probably think is the normal insulation. It's not. It has like 6 different layers of thermal value. The best insulation you can be using is always hardboard insulation, without going into crazy money territories. What I am using here is a dead man. This was just simply because I didn't have anyone there with me the day. The idea of being able to lift that board up and screw it at the same time is almost impossible. I did actually have my little brother kind of turn up just for a little bit, but as you can see, he didn't want to help me. So I had to get the dead man back in, and then we have moved on to the kitchen. There has been a small jump here just simply because I was in a big roof conversion job at the time, so I had to make sure I was shifting. As you can see, the boxing is done. The top area of that kitchen I did actually have to replace because I wasn't happy with it. I ended up replacing it with just ply boards and gluing and screwing. Now for the lovely side. So we're doing the floor. I have removed the carpet, obviously. That's horrible. I can't work over the top of that. And so the first thing to do is get those battens down so we can then put insulation in. The insulation again is 25mm, and the battens I made sure were 25mm. The reason I did this was so there was zero cavity between the insulation and the board that will go over the battens. This just makes it rock solid, and here's a little video of my doggo. I'll let you enjoy this one.
How about you, Boo Boo? Say Boo Boo. This is the lovely Boo Boo. Boo Boo, stay, sit.
I ended up using a 12mm board for the floor, but I could have gone for a 9mm. With the fact that there was no cavity between the insulation and that plyboard, a 9mm would have been more than acceptable. And with all that screwed down, this is the current look of the floor. We ended up putting laminate floorboards down. I'm not a fan, but they were cheap and quick. I then moved on to making the end frame for the bed. You probably wouldn't need to do that. You could probably just sit it straight on top and it would be perfectly fine. But that has held up very well so far. Now moving on to the steps. The steps, I really did take a while to plan out, and I was really going back and forth with making sure that I liked them. And the bottom one there, that ended up being a chest opener, along with the second one, a chest opener. The taller tower, I wanted sliding drawers coming all the way out to the top. That did change a little bit, you'll see why. But as you can see, it's a hell of a drop coming down from the top there. So I was definitely going to need to put some sort of protection railing in. You'll see what I did there. But with the batten framing in, which was surprisingly strong, I ended up putting the side panel on. This I knew would be quite awkward to just cut perfectly in one go. So I'm going to use the router on it, so I can just chuck that board on there, screw it on, and get the router on it. This attachment basically cuts through the board, and it has a little rolling pin on the other side which stops you from going any deeper into that ply than needed. As you can see, it's very effective and the overall finish is quite nice. And this is how the steps came out. They are super sturdy. The look is just so appealing. The drawers came out nicer than I expected. That was one solid piece of timber and one solid continuous grain. We then got a nice haul of goodies. We got the cooker, we got the toilet, we got the fridge, and we got the window. But as you can see, the van was all coming together quite nicely. Lou was there trying to help me out, kind of plan a few things through. It was a really nice stage getting to this. Finally, it was time to install the window. This has to be one of the things I was most excited about getting in, but it was a little bit harder than I originally expected to just chuck that window in somewhere. Ended up coming to the conclusion of coming quite a bit higher than I thought. The reason for this, I wanted to be able to look up to the sky. Moving on to the cutting, I am using a multi-tool for this. Multi-tool is very accurate in its cuts. You don't cut your fingers with it, which is again a massive plus side for those who aren't too sure about using power tools. If you were to put that onto your arm, you wouldn't cut yourself. It's a very slow and accurate tool. As you can see, the cut came out lovely and the window did actually go into that opening first time. I was very, very happy about that. There is an internal frame which you use as a way of pinching that window into the van, and it screws into the window and it wedges it together. It like makes a sandwich out of the van. It's probably the bulk of the strength, but you do have to put sealant on there anyway to make a nice waterproofing seal. But the window ended up being one of the things where we're most happy about. We sit at it, continuously work next to it, and it lets so much natural light in. The fact that it was a full opener, we are so glad we chose that window, and not a slider, which only opens halfway. And it's a really low profile finish as well, so there wasn't much of a worry about getting caught on trees down these tight roads, which there are many of going throughout Europe. And then we can move on to the table. So as you can see, we're using it a lot. We are always at the table. We work there, we plan there, we do so much at that table. It needed to be strong, it needed to be appealing. It needed to suit the van aesthetic, and it did perfectly. So we ended up getting the Maxi fan. Sorry, the Max Air fan. I always get confused on the name. After using it, we couldn't recommend any other fan apart from that fan. The power is insane. And also you can have it running and open without the rain coming in. This was a big factor about choosing this fan. Lou has actually painted before in Australia. In Australia, we built some houses for Aborigines, and Lou did actually basically paint all of the houses there. But I couldn't help but catch on to the small strokes she was doing.
Yeah, he's got so thick.
I knew you'd say that.
And now to the big one, ladies and gentlemen, the kitchen. So now this kitchen is Sapele timbers. I did want to make sure I had really thick timbers around the kitchen. I was worried about it feeling thin and flimsy, hence why the drawer fronts are very chunky. The top drawer is obviously for all the cutleries and small bowls. The bottom one ended up being for the bulk of food. But as you can see, the grains are absolutely beautiful and that color is so warming. And then we have the under sink cupboard. This ended up being more than big enough, and we ended up putting some nice strips of Sapele over these doors with a 10mm gap, which actually gave it quite a nice effect with the white coming through. The bottom door, which went to the inverter and the water heater, there was a little strip on there with the R Congo. That's because all of this Sapele is unfortunately from the Congo. My dad insisted that it was left on there as a kind of a tribute to where it came from. Now down to the hob, one of the most important ones for me. I am our cook in our tiny home because Lou works so much. This hob is very high quality and very well made, but I do think any double hob would be more than acceptable in a van this size. I have put everything I have purchased or its alternative in the description. So if you like anything and you're worried about purchasing anything low quality or worried about it looking too big or too small for the van, again, it's all in the description. This is the kitchen as it currently is. We are so happy with how it came out, and it has such a lovely warming feel to it. The Sapele has been soaked in linseed oil, but let's just get a shout out to the grain here, everyone. That's absolutely beautiful. Look at that. Oh my God. This is our golden tap with a flexi hose. Again, in description, that tap was a really good buy. Moving on to the tower. At the top of this tower, it's a bulk of Lou's clothing and random bathroom stuff. I don't know what it is, but that goes in there. And then we have, in the middle of the tower, we have our fridge. At this stage in the van, this is the state of the steps. This is the current stage of the steps. But as you can see, it came out really nice and sturdy. and it blends really well into the van. It doesn't feel like it's too boisterous. It doesn't stand out too much, and you still get a really nice airy feel, even with those large steps in there, which are now all storage. This is the bed without the mattress on, and this is with the big sapele chunk which holds the mattress in. This is now the finish height of the bed. This is how much space we have when it comes to laying in bed. And we are perfectly happy with this. Obviously, with the comments, you guys are questioning it a little bit, and you are a little bit like apprehensive about it. I would stress, you would be surprised.
But it's really cozy. It's like a little coffin.
So for the toilet, it's on a sliding runner. I doubled up on the drawer runners for this, ended up being more than acceptable for both of our weights. We got the porta potty, the largest one, again in the description. We are perfectly happy with this cassette toilet, and the way it's been designed, by chance, ended up being a very good way of getting rid of the smell. Once that slides back into the tower, all the smell goes. It also is very, very handy when it comes to space. When you want to go into the shower, you don't have to worry about that toilet being in your way. You have a nice clear area to stand. As you can see, we've got a little bit of storage for like the shampoos, conditioners, all that jazz. This is the shower we have decided to use. This is actually a bum gun, everyone. You get the complete control of how much water you use, and in a van like this, it's very, very handy. Now, as you can see, we started to go to the back of the van. I've cut the back of that wall out. The roller door is gone, thank God. It was very, very hard to remove. I actually almost lost my finger when removing that, so that's great. The door I have chosen is a very heavy duty security door. Very heavy on the back of the van. I would recommend just getting a normal caravan door. It's very nice to get in and out of. It's a very large door. Now time for the water tank. So we have gone for a 125 litre water tank. This is more than big enough for a van our size. It lasts us about a week. I have put a push fit connection on the bottom left of this water tank, as if I need to get the water tank off, I wanted to be able to quickly remove it, but with the plumbing staying in place, I use little clips to hold the pipes in place. These are, again, quick release clamps for the plumbing to be mounted on the underside of the van. A very, very good way of doing it. And I have used compression fittings, a way of connecting the pipes. Again, so if I want to remove those pipes, I can. The filling up process is super simple. And throughout Europe, I would say, do not worry about filling up water. There's always access points. You just need a hose to connect your water tank to these points. Now, moving into the little cabinet underneath the kitchen worktop. So at this stage, it contained the water pump, which I'm now wiring up. This 12-volt water pump, I would not recommend. It's pretty naff, but it hasn't broken yet, so I can't diss it completely. We have the Propex 6-litre water heater. This thing is incredible. The link is in the description. I can't rage about this water heater enough. It was amazing. Talk about amazing. This Renogy 2000 watt inverter. It's a pure sine wave inverter, everyone. This basically protects all of your devices. Again, in the description. To the top left there, we have our solar panel regulator. This came with 2 solar panels. I believe is 200 watt or maybe 300 watt. I have forgotten. The link is in description. And top right there, you can see our fuse board. This is a pretty cheap fuse board. I would recommend getting something a little bit better. I'll put in the description one that I would recommend, as this has been okay and we've had no problems. It always trips if it needs to. And for our batteries, and where all the bulk of the wiring is under the seating area. You can get to the batteries within a few seconds. Do not have it so it's locked away. You need to be able to get to them if you need to. We have 120 AH batteries and we have 3 of them. So we have 360 amp hours of batteries. These are lead acid batteries, so you only can use about 50 to 60% of these batteries. As you can see, we have a 240 socket which is mounted on the outside, which goes through the inverter, or the cut through which goes into the front cab. Unfortunately, I filmed very little of this, close to nothing. When it comes to a cut through in your van, I would say if you have a Luton box van, a normal panel van, if there's a bulkhead, cut through. Make sure you have access to the front of your cab and vice versa. For safety reasons, you want to be able to drive your van away if needed without ever leaving your vehicle. This is a super brief overview of the van conversion. There are 3 videos of this van conversion, but I wanted to give you a super condensed version of it. I cannot express enough. Anyone who's thinking about buying a van and converting it, please do it. The freedom you get from building your own van, so you know the ins and outs of everything, is so lovely. And you make that van your home. You can then take that wherever you want in the world, and you know that if something breaks, you know exactly where that could have broken, and how to fix it. I do think there's a little bit of it for everyone. So if you want to try and get into it, go out, try and find a van that's as big as you feel comfortable driving. Make it so it's self-sufficient. Go and find some beautiful places throughout the world. Go and explore. Find your tiny home. Get out of this debt mortgage lifestyle. The modern world is just too expensive for a majority of these younger people these days. And it was for myself and my partner, and we were earning a lot of money at the time. And it still was just outpacing us in how much we were earning to spending, especially in England. If you're from England, you know what I'm saying. It's so expensive. If you're in your 20s or your 30s and you're not too sure whether you want to settle down yet, you're not ready to settle down yet. So go and get a van, go and travel around Europe, England, wherever it has to be, go and explore. Don't regret locking yourself down into a 20, 30-year contract. There's so much to see. The planet's huge. And whilst you're healthy, travel, meet new people, just go and enjoy it, my dudes. All right, I'm glad you enjoyed the video. That's about it. Whoop.